Kia ora and haramai. So tonight I'm going to take you through the wonderful world of medical implants. This beautiful mystery that is hidden within inside our body. So I want to go teach you about what type of devices are kind of being made, and mainly about how we actually get them to work, how we power these devices so that they do work. So who am I? How do you know I'm not just some rambling guy brought off on the street? As Nicole just said, I am studying my PhD. I was enticed by the shiny, fancy title, and also being able to help people by improving these devices and the communication. So I've done some research on how do we use non-human tissue to investigate these devices, and also how they work when they're not in ideal environments. But let me start at the beginning of what is an implant. Does anybody have an idea of what a medical implant is? You can just yell it out if you want. Yeah, a pacemaker is one of the most common things that we do here, as well as a hip replacements, those types of things. Essentially, what a device is any device that is placed within somebody to be designed to replace, augment, or monitor their bodily functions. So, very much like a pacemaker, how it helps sort out your cardiac rhythm so that your blood keeps pumping through your body, or a hip replacement where it's replacing the hip joint. But what makes these devices smart? Like, they're made by incredibly talented people. They're doing incredible work. But what makes them so smart? Well, it's the devices, it's the technology that we place on them. So we add a little sensor to them so that they can monitor and see what's happening in the bodily functions. Now, this is also attached to some computers, tiny little bare bone electronics that can interpret all that data that they're getting in to see what we should be doing with that data. And they're very much like essentially putting a smartwatch that can detect how your sleeping habits, how you're going for when you run, and all your heart rate, all in this tiny little chip that goes inside you. But unlike your phone or your smartwatch, they're inside the body. So you can't just plug them into the wall when they need recharging. So how do we power these devices? And that comes to the first most common way. We'll bring it back to those pacemakers. So on the left, thank you. Directions and dyslexia do not go well together. So on your left is like the common, most used pacemaker. It is essentially this way to go and shock your heart, attached to a bunch of wires that go inside your heart. And then in that big box is your battery. Now, this goes and it's quite large. It sits under your skin. You can feel it. Those wires, the patients can also feel them. So we're trying to make that more comfortable. So we bring it down into an even smaller one that's on the right now, and it still has this battery that's inside it, but no longer we don't have any of those wires. So this is making a device more comfortable. And that battery that's inside it is essentially a little black box of a whole bunch of chemicals doing their little reactions so that electrons, these stuff that makes electricity flow through your electronics, they go and work their little magic and allow the device to work for about 7 to 8 years. Now, at that 8-year mark, they've worked a long time. And you know how our phones kind of start to die after a year? Well, they're also starting to die as they're not producing as much energy. So we need a way to recharge them. But that's not the only other problem. These devices, in a weirdly common thing, are made out of a material that is toxic to the human body. So they're made out of lithium. That's the typical one. So there's also the problem of this has been working away at 7, 8 years. So we could recharge them, but you don't know about that packaging and would rather be on the better side to not go and cause you some extreme bodily harm. So we still have to remove those devices. And that creates extra complications from additional surgeries and stuff. And also these people are tending to need these pacemakers, not just for those 8 years, but an additional 10 or 20 years. So other people have decided to go and make biocompatible ones out of materials that our body won't find toxic and is safe to be in there. And they've also decided, well, what happens if we make them biodegradable as well, so that they can, as the body likes to do, it likes to destroy anything foreign that's inside the body. Well, why don't we harness that so that they break down over time, so once we're finished using with them, we don't need to go back in there and get that surgery. And so these can dissolve. These are fantastic. However, they can only last about 3 months. So that doesn't solve a problem for a pacemaker, which needs to last a long time. So another way that we can go do something is, well, as I've been doing around here, my hands are moving a lot. And as you're all doing, you're breathing, your heart's pumping. Our body's constantly in motion. Things are moving. So why not harvest all that biomechanical energy? Now, there's a few ways to do this, but I very much like piezoelectric material. I think that's the coolest one out there. It will also show up a bit later in our talk as well, so that's why I'm picking that one. It's essentially a material that it just sits there. It does nothing. But as soon as you go and start to go and compress it, pull it, twist it or bend it, however you decide to make that thing move, it will go create an electrical difference on the two ends of it, allowing those little sneaky electrons to go move again, creating a voltage and a current through your system so that you can go power these devices. So typically for these devices, they're this hard material that when you get them to move, they only move like this tiny fraction of millimeters, these nanometers that they move. But our body is so, it's round and it's got different shapes that's not so hard. So people have designed these ones that can wrap around and be flexible to the body and to the heart. These are made with those piezoelectric materials and also, as we already have in our bodies, plastic. A bit of polymer they're added together, and these ones hopefully don't contribute to your microplastic diets that we're already experiencing. But they are brilliant because they can wrap around the body and go and make this electricity. So they've been testing them on pigs, which have a lot of similar body properties to us, surprisingly. But these are located in very specific locations. So your heart, your lungs, only places that your body can actually move. But what if we want to go place it somewhere where there isn't a lot of movement? Somewhere maybe like on our spine or something. Well, there's another way that we could do it. It's the same way that we've been thinking about charging phones without cables. It's wireless power transfer. Essentially, you've got an implant inside the body, you've got a device outside the body, and you're just blasting power to this device inside the body. So the big boy for this one is electromagnetic waves. These are a combination of electric fields and magnetic fields together. And we are surrounded by these constantly. They're actually what allow us to see, what causes sunburn, where we can use for x-rays to see inside us, and also what we can use to, what comes off our heaters, as well as the important parts for us, how we can go and cook our food at lunchtime and also watch our televisions or send our emails and watch our TikToks. And in those, these are all like given different names depending on their frequency. Essentially, how much these waves go and wiggle, how fast they wiggle. And we like to work in the radio frequency area and try not to push it into the microwave section, as you can imagine what that does. So again, multiple different ways that you can do it. You can try to harness the electrical side more, the electric field side more, or the magnetic field side more. But the most popular one that we use all the time is inductive coupling. So essentially, on one side of the circuit, on the outside, this device, we essentially we send power through this coil of wires. And when we do that, that creates a magnetic field in that coil. That magnetic field can link up to a second coil, which then in turn causes an electric field in that coil to cause those electrons to flow and move around again, allowing us to power the device. So up in the left-hand corner, your right-hand corner, is what one of these devices would look like. They're this flat, circular little piece. And if you can see it, this is a device that's designed to go on the spine to be able to tell you how much weight is being placed on the spine after a spinal fusion surgery in which they're fusing together spinal vertebrae. And that giant patch down there is where it's situated. So you can go locate your external device on it, send that power to it, get your information out of the power of the device, let it do its reading, and then later get that information out. But another one that is quite interesting, that's quite new in this space, is this magnetoelectric stuff. It uses those magnetic waves. Now, this is nice because unlike the inductive coupling, which is reaching its limit, this one we can actually start shoving more power into it. And this uses the magnetic waves and a material called magnetostrictive material, which is essentially a material that you put a magnetic wave on it and it starts to bend and twist and do all of those things. And on its own, kind of not doing much. We could stick that in there, we're not getting power from it. But that previously mentioned material before, the one that I love so much, the piezoelectric material, that one, well, we can sandwich it in between two of these. And now, as the magnetic material bends and wiggles and moves around, so does the piezoelectric one. And that again creates that power to go power that implant. And this is a new and budding device, which is beautiful. But the one that I truly have fallen in love with, not just because I've Stockholmed myself over the past 3 years of my PhD, is acoustic waves. These are the sounds that we hear from our beautiful birds, my horrible voice as I speak right now. And if we crank that up a lot higher into a frequency in which we can't hear, we get into ultrasound. This is the same stuff that you use when you're going and looking at babies as they're developing. So if we're already blasting that in people, we know it's safe and stuff, so why don't we try using that? And essentially what a sound wave is a bunch of pressure differentials. Essentially, you're kind of punching the air and forcing the air to move along. Now, this sounds very much like something else that we've already talked about. That piezoelectric material comes back again. Now, as much as we can push it and twist it to create electricity, if we give it the electricity in such a pattern that is wiggling and moving itself, it will cause that material to go expand and contract, creating that sound wave that we can go send to our implant, which has another one of those little piezoelectric elements in it that expands and contracts and then gets electricity into that device. So these devices are tiny. And The one on left, thank you. Oh, this doesn't have a laser pointer. Maybe it does. I can't figure it out. The one that says it's got the little electrodes on it, that's actually part of a two-part system. That one sits inside the brain that helps go and regulate neural stimulation, with it actually being connected to a secondary device that uses that inductive coupling system, because ultrasound can't actually get through bones, but inductive coupling can, while acoustic waves can go deeper and propagate further inside tissue than inductive coupling. So we're kind of, throughout this, we're getting this kind of symbiosis between all of these different types of systems. They've all got their own little spaces and their little niches of how they work. None of them are specifically better than each other. They've all got their own little niches, much like our nature in the world. But we've now kind of got ways to power these devices. So how do we communicate with them? The most basic way, we can go and store that information for later. We can put it in the body, then maybe do an extra surgery later to get it out. Or if it's traveling through our gut microbiome to try to find out information that, when it passes to the other side, somebody can do the hard job. But if we want to try to avoid those types of situations, there's other ways. One of them is being sneaky and just using one of those wireless power systems again. So essentially what communication is essentially a bunch of lows and highs that is created by electrical signals that we can turn into zeros for the lows and ones for the highs. And then we can take a series of zeros and ones, put them into our own little alphabet of stuff that we can able to convert into, well, essentially readable English. So if we go and modulate this implant with this wireless power system in a particular way of that information, we can actually send that information outside of the body. However, this needs extra space inside that implant, and it also needs extra power. Two things that is against what we tend to try to do with implants, which is making them smaller and less noticeable by the patient, and also use less and less power so that they become a bit more reliable. And a beautiful way of doing this is, if you're already using a wireless communication system, why not harness it by using backscatter communication, which I will explain rather than just giving you a title. And so in this scenario of power transfer, I and maybe you have all been assuming that when we send the power to our implant, it gets fully absorbed. All of that power is absorbed by that implant. However, in the real world, there are other things that happen, so that actually doesn't always happen. Sometimes, if these two devices aren't perfectly tuned to each other, that power that gets sent to the implant actually is like, nah, I'm going to bounce off it like a tennis ball on a brick wall and come back straight to that transmitter. Now, as much as that's annoying for powering the device, if we want to communicate from it, we can actually harness this. If we find a way to go tune and detune these implants, we can actually get the sound wave or the electromagnetic wave to hit the implant and be absorbed by it, power the device, then we detune it, and then we send that information back. And if we do that in a regular way, getting those lows and highs again, we can actually encode that communication data and send it back to the outside. And this is the one that I've spent my last three years on. So I like this one the most. But yeah, that kind of brings me to the end of this. I think, in my unbiased opinion, ultrasound with backscatter communication, that is going to be the revolutionary thing of the future. But in reality, all of these are wonderful technologies that brilliant researchers are working towards making them be even better and fit into their little niches even more. Much like how every animal in nature finds its own little niche to how it works, that's much what all the technology is been happening in this medical industry, is trying to work towards this beautiful symbiosis between humans and technology so that we can stop medical problems before they even happen, so that you can keep living your life without any problems. Yeah, thank you very much. And questions?
I know it's not your favorite one, but for the induction,
Yep.
it uses the same technology as anti-theft at most shopping centres and everything. Yep. Is there any problem if you have such a device implanted that walking through the doors might actually activate the device and make it either lose, if it tries to transmit information and it's going, I sent the information, I'm going to delete what I have inside?
So what I didn't tell you about this, with all of these being at different frequencies, there's legally different bands of frequencies that you're allowed to use. So it kind of gets around that. But even if we didn't have that, you can put in safety background things inside the device that would be saying, okay, only start doing stuff if you're being told this certain signal. Essentially like a handshake of saying, hello, I am the device that is meant to turn you on, and I am your key, so unlock and start doing things. In most of these devices, you're not going to have to worry too much about that, or at least for security, because you'll actually have to be touching the person's body, because inductive coupling only works at the frequencies at the maximum of 5 centimeters, while ultrasound only works about 10 centimeters, which is fantastic, but both of them generally need to be touching your body to actually be working at full capacity.
Is there any possibility of powering these devices from the electrical energy that you already get out of a muscle or surrounding cells?
Yeah, so one of the things that I didn't cover was biochemical harvesting, which it essentially uses the glucose in our body and converts that with a bit of oxygen from the blood supply, and uses our body's natural processes of converting food into energy, and it does that kind of similar to like how a kind of battery works, but it uses our body as the parts inside that little chemical box. So this is just like skimming the top of like the most popular ones. While there's like each one of these you can dive further into, but yeah, people are working on that, and it's incredible stuff that they are doing.
Kia ora, thank you. Thank you for suffering Stockholm Syndrome on behalf of all of us. Ka pai, ka pai. I'm very interested in the backscatter as well, and assuming there isn't some sort of patent pending NDA situation, how is it going with the research?
It's going well. Like, I'm currently just cleaning up a whole bunch of data from some previous testing that I've done and trying to refine my testing setup so that I can do my final full test in the way that I have the most confidence for it. But essentially, I'm looking at changing the shape of ultrasound devices in a way that's going to be incorporated into our current manufacturing processes, and just trying to see if that will go and actually see if that's a viable solution or work, or find out if that is just not going to work. But at least, you know, we know. But yeah, so it's going well. So I'm hopefully finishing in June. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Cool. Thank you very much.
All right, give Kaleb another round of applause.